Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we discuss uncomfortable conversations. We have uncensored conversations, exchanging information, providing tons of resources. We do not do therapy on this podcast, period, point blank. That's it. That's all. At any point of this conversation, that's going to be streaming on all major platforms, sponsored by Anchor, produced by Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. Any point the listener is triggered, because we do real talk here. Fluff is an action word. That's what you do to pillows and put on cappuccinos and shit. We want you to call 911 because your paramedic CEO brother is not going to show up. Our guest, she's not going to show up. However, we have a ton of resources. So we have the suicide hotline and phone number. We have the domestic violence hotline and website. We have the trafficking hotline and website. We have sexual abuse hotline and website. We have a number of substance abuse and drug and alcohol phone numbers and websites listed. Al-Anon, Narcotics Anonymous, AA. There's a new 911 number that's in effect for the nation, and that's going to be nationwide on July 16th of this year. It's in some places in the U.S., but officially nationwide, it will be out July 16th of 2022. And that number is 988. That's the 911 number for mental health related issues only. I want to welcome a very special guest in our house. Her name is Erin Reiland. She is a certified eating disorder, anxiety, breathwork, NLP practitioner, and trauma coach. She has a great long CV. Let me read it real quick. She's been featured on ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, and the CW media outlets. She's the executive author and contributor for Brains with a Z magazine, on the top 10 online magazines in the world. She's also been featured in eating disorder interviews and videos. She's a blog contributor. She has hosted a bunch of podcasts. We met on Clubhouse or in Clubhouse. She's a certified disorder, eating, anxiety, and trauma coach through Hunger for Happiness Academy. She's a certified pause breathwork practitioner. We're going to talk about that. She also, again, is a certified NLP practitioner and EFT coach, which I did an interview with a lady that does EFT, and we actually did a session doing a podcast. She's also certified in eating disorder recovery coach, mindfulness coaching, DBT therapy, CBT therapy, volunteer for NEDA, the National Eating Disorder Association, and she's an ambassador for Project Heal, the nation's largest nonprofit delivering grants that support people with eating disorders that cannot afford it. Erin Reiland, my friend, my compadre, my Clubhouse contributor. I love you, lady, and we're going to go into some of these topics, specifically focusing on sexually based offenses, domestic violence, and how they relate to eating disorders. I want to start off with welcoming you to the show.
Thank you.
And I want to start off by saying I am so privileged and honored to be talking to you, because let's start off with the room that you are one of the moderators on in Clubhouse. Can you talk about that particular room? And then we'll jump into the other stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a co-moderator for Disordered Eating Disorders room on Clubhouse. And it's really the only room in Clubhouse, which kind of blows my mind, for disordered eating and eating disorders. So it's pretty important and awesome. And, we do it every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific. And it's really just about supporting others. I do it with a doctor and another coach. And so we kind of have the whole, package of the medical type side and our side, and just giving support and, helping others, or talking about our own stories and just weaving it in between. So it's been a really great privilege to be asked to be doing this now for almost a year.
When we met in that particular room, a lot of times, and as I told the other participants in the room, I go in a lot of these mental health rooms on Clubhouse and in other platforms. And so for me, I'm typically either the only guy in the room or I'm a handful of guys with a couple of fingers left over in the room. I don't mind that because you know why? I was raised in a household where at least 75% or greater was women. And so I always grew up with a healthier respect for women and women's issues. And so for me, I'm in my comfort zone when I'm having these conversations when it's primarily all women. The other thing that I like doing is being an advocate to try to pull more men to these conversations because this stuff happens to men too. So I want to jump into that. We're going to be talking about domestic violence and sexually based offenses. You are a certified eating disorder and NLP practitioner and trauma coach.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to start off by telling us how an NLP, what that is, and how it pertains to those two traumas.
So I got into this. It's a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, and there's different levels. And I got into it because I loved how it was a different approach to therapy, and it wasn't it's not just talk therapy, and nothing wrong with that. But I love how it's really going into reprogramming our neuro, like the neuro, of that part of the neuro linguistic. So the mind, the our audio, the talking, and reprogramming kind of the way that we see things, the way that we think, the way that we behave, because a lot of the topics and trauma, whether that's domestic violence or sexual or what have you, comes and it stems and then it sticks in your brain. It's like I always say the hamster wheel. And so our brains are like on a hamster wheel because what our brains want to do is go back to the last memory, the last situation that it knows. Now, that can be a really horrible situation, but that's the last thing our brains kind of, latch onto. So what I try to do and work with them is recreating, starting to take that brain out of that programming that it's been in for so long sometimes and create new ways of seeing, new ways of handling different situations. And so it's really helpful with people who have experienced trauma because that's, it's stuck in their brain. It really, it can just ruin someone's, life when you go on for years and years stuck in that place of being re-traumatized.
For your practice, and I presume the people that you see there, you call them clients, correct?
Yeah, they're clients.
What is typically a referral to you like? How do you get your clients?
So it's interesting. I get such a wide variety of clients, and I think it's because of the wide range of what I specialize in, but it's not just one thing. And I think because I've gone through everything that I work with women on, I've gone through every single thing. I think that people relate to me and my clients understand that I'm not trying to tell them how to feel or say I understand when I wouldn't, because I do understand. And so a lot of times with doing podcasts or I like to write a lot of articles to get it out, break the stigma. And, social media, I am very open, honest, and I think that resonates with people. So that's kind of, how people get in contact with me to, work through some of these issues that, have really been hurting them.
In your practice, Do you see men and women?
I see only women, but I have noticed a rise of men with eating disorders. So I'm not counting that out. I don't want to, exclude men from working with me. It's more of, I think it's a stigma still with men reaching out for help and saying that they have, any of the things that I work with. But I really do want to be more, I guess, open and letting them know it's okay. I try to say it's okay who you are, what you are, to reach out to me. But definitely, that's something I'm looking to do.
Okay. Since we're talking about eating disorders, let's jump right into that. I want you to talk about how eating disorders, well, let me restate that. Let's talk about how sexually based offenses and domestic violence play a part into someone developing an eating disorder or disordered eating.
Yeah. So in this, if we're being, because we know eating disorders, disorder eating, anything can have such a wide range of how or why it starts. But when relating to sexual abuse, trauma, domestic violence, what I've seen when I worked with clients is because of these offenses, they felt a loss of control. They felt that their bodies have been violated. And so a lot of them will use food as a way to control the small things they are able to control. So if someone has been sexually assaulted or abused and they've been in either one assault, like an assault, or if it's continual sexual assault, that with food, they can either deny themselves and try to just shrink away, or they can become, the binge eating to make it so, or feel that they are protecting themselves by, the overweight to not be attractive, to hope that this somehow, and this is all not, I think, a conscious thing, but more of a subconscious thing that they end up doing. Oh, I think you're on mute. Did you mute yourself? Yeah, you did mute yourself. You're back.
No, my dog's laying here and she's snoring, so I'm trying to keep the background noise. And my wife's in her office working, so she's in here with me now. So my bad. My question to you is, what are the different forms of eating disorders? Just real quick.
So, well, just the basic ones. So we have the anorexia, or restriction. We have binge eating disorder, where it's just binging. There's no not compensating by, purging, which would be bulimia. And bulimia is, eating, then purging. And the purging can be through laxatives, through vomiting. And then there are the subtypes, but over exercising, things of that nature. But those are like the main basic ones.
For you being a trauma coach, and when you have clients come in with eating disorders or disordered eating, what would you say the percentage of those clients have? What are the percentages in terms of how many of those that have those eating disorders or disordered eating are survivors of domestic violence and or sexually based offenses?
I would say at least 25%, which to me is a very high rate, since eating disorders are so, complicated and layered. But having a I could say, a quarter or 25%, and that's a lot. to me.
Okay. When you encounter those particular clients, is your approach different compared to the other 75%?
Oh, yeah.
And if so, how?
Oh, yeah. 100%. That is different, because when you have anyone with trauma, and especially sexual trauma, or being violated, you can't just jump in. No, you can't jump in with any client, because it's not going to work. But when you talk about being violated in that way, it brings a whole nother layer of knowing how the person can begin to trust you and understand and feel that I'm not there to judge or to, quote, fix them, or anything that sometimes I've seen that they're apprehensive, or the shame and the guilt. And so I tread lightly, definitely at first, because I know how it feels. And I wouldn't want someone coming at me in a very direct way. So you have to be very almost, not indirect, but just allow for it to come out, not me pushing and saying, what happened to you? How did this happen to you? Because that's not going to work. It just makes you feel even worse.
What's a typical session like?
So it's an hour. I do it every week with them. And depending on what we're working on, it usually is just us talking about the week. And it is kind of like talk therapy, but it also is, I give different, depending on their situation. I have different worksheets that I've created, different exercises in either breath work or exercises in reframing their thoughts throughout the week and having them write these down. And so then during our session, we can go over them and see how the way that we're trying to reprogram, see the world through a lens of non-trauma, and work on those things, and then can build on that, and just really supporting them and having them feel safe, but also changing the way that they've felt. That's when I've been able to see progression and see that they're feeling safe. They're seeing that life isn't, scary. Because a lot of them are scared.
In regards to the anxiety portion of your practice,
Mm-hmm.
for you as the coach, when we talk about anxiety, how do you approach panic attacks dealing with some of these domestic and or sexually based offenses? Because you're not able to prescribe medication or anything.
No.
So how does your practice deal with anxiety in relationship to those two issues?
Yeah, and anxiety is probably in every single person who's had sexually, things happen to them. And every single person has some sort of anxiety. And so they're in that state of fight or flight. They're in this constant hypervigilant state because they've had to be. And so bringing them from like here to here is a process. I do breath work, a lot of breath work with them, to have them be able to, in a minute, go from that like fight or flight down to the, rest and digest that our bodies want to be in. So I teach them short, simple breathing patterns, because when you are in that panic attack state, and I say this because I used to have them, that it can feel like you're dying, like you truly feel like you're dying. And so in those moments, sometimes breathing isn't going to help, right? So I do have them do breathing in the beginning. And then they practice knowing, okay, I am safe. I don't need to run. I'm okay. And having them repeat these things over and over again and knowing that this will pass. You just give it, like it's usually, I tell them, give yourself 5 minutes and breathe and remind yourself you're okay. And I'll have different mantras for different, clients, whatever feels really, we'll pick a mantra and then they say it and they do it. And like, once they're calmed down, I have them write out what the situation, what was happening beforehand, what triggered them. So then we have the base of what are patterns, what are we seeing that is triggering them to then go into this panic attack. So it's kind of like a process, but it feels really, really bad. But once I get them to start doing this and they start seeing it, that it works, the panic attacks lessen, but the anxiety might still be a little high.
How close do you work with other licensed and degree therapists?
So I work actually really closely. A lot of the coaches I work with, we actually will refer other people if we feel they're a better fit. So someone might refer trauma, someone who's experienced trauma, but they've reached out to one of the, like my friend, right? And she'll say, hey, I know Erin, she's more well-versed in trauma. Let me give her, have you contact her. So I'm really close with other coaches because we also want to give, each other help, support. So we know how to help our clients in a more effective way, which I think is really awesome to have instead of I want more clients or I'm better than you. I don't have time for that. Just don't.
Yeah. And to me, it's like, for me being a paramedic, a lot of times people say, well, why do you talk about mental health stuff? Like, what does that have to do with somebody being shot or stabbed or in a car accident or, you're a firefighter also. So what does that have to do with, you dealing with fire suppression and all this stuff? And I say, 85% of your 911 calls that come out are EMS related. And out of that, you can break it down to 2 categories. You got your trauma and you got your medical. The traumas are just what you said, the gunshots, the stabbings, the shootings, the car wrecks and all that stuff or whatever. Your medical is going to be your heart attacks, your strokes, your diabetic issues, your eating disorder issues, as well as a lot of the calls that I've gotten over my 14 plus year career on the medical or mental health related. Mm-hmm. Your anxieties all the way from A to Z. Panic attacks, anxieties, your depressions, your excited delirium syndromes, a whole host of mental health issues I'm responding on. Here's where my problem is when it comes to that. The lack of training. Mm-hmm. In 14 plus years of being in EMS and being fired, I've had one in-service training. That was in 2019 at the fire department I work for. So I work for a private EMS service as well as a paid fire department or fire protection district. And at the fire department, we had an in-service in 2019. Just one. In 14 plus years. Everything else that I've learned about mental health has been on my own. Like I sought it out because I realized, well, damn, how many red flags did I miss when it comes to sexually based offenses? Because I would get called on that stuff all the time. How many trafficking issues did I miss? How many acts of domestic violence? And again, I went on those calls all the time. So I think for me, I have to be more of an advocate and talk to these other first responders and say, hey, we need more training. We need to have conversations like what we're having. You need to go into some of these eating disorders and disordered eating because I gave your room the example. Here's how EMS ties into these things. I had a call for suicidal ideation. We go, everybody and their mama showed up, police, fire, and EMS. It was at an outpatient eating disorder place. The young woman was in her early 20s. She had swallowed a bunch of pills, like 20 pills and something else. We still to this day don't know what it was because she wouldn't tell us. She was at home. She told her aunt immediately after taking these pills. Her aunt was like, "Oh my God, I got to call 911." She said, "No, I want to go talk to my therapist at this eating disorder place." And she told her aunt, "If you don't take me to this place, I'm not going to go when the ambulance shows up. I want to do an AMA against medical advice. I want to refuse." The aunt was like, "Okay, but it's 30 minutes away. What if something happens to you?" She said, "Well, then you can call 911." They jump in the car. It's a 30-minute drive. They get to the place. The minute that she told the therapist that she had taken these pills, the lady called 911. She was like, okay. We show up. So I'm on the phone with poison control. My partner's checking her vitals and all this stuff. She's not really seeing anything. And then during the assessment, that's when we find out the backstory. Found out that she had an eating disorder because she had been sexually assaulted some years ago. And this eating disorder had just been bothering her more and more, as well as the PTSD from the trauma of being sexually assaulted. She couldn't take it no more. But there's two people in the world when it comes to suicide, those that are successful and those that want help, but they'll make an attempt. Fortunately for her, she made an attempt. So that changed the whole interaction with that patient from that point on. But because most EMS crews, they just have tunnel vision when it comes to mental health stuff because of the lack of training, they would have missed that. That's important. That was a very important lesson that I learned. The second time I had a call for eating disorder was a lady that called for GI bleed. She was having dry heaves. We show up. She's sitting there dry heaving. She has a bloody tissue in her hand. And she's like, "I can't stop these spasms. I can't eat or drink anything else. I haven't eaten in the last couple of days or whatever." I said, "Have you been hospitalized recently or anything like that?" She was like, "Yes." I said, "Can you have my partner get the paperwork or what have you?" Because she was speaking in like 1 or 2 word sentences for a while. He goes get her discharge paperwork because she had been hospitalized the month before. We look at the paperwork and it says she had esophageal varices, which are like bleeding ulcers in your throat. I said, why you got the bloody tissue in your hand? Where are you bleeding from? She said, "My mouth." I took my pen light out. I'm looking in her mouth and she has all these mouth sores. 3 things popped in my head. I said, either she's an alcoholic, she has cancer, or she has an eating disorder. I told my partner, I said, "Can you go out to the truck and get the emesis bag because we didn't have any in our trauma pack?" He goes out there. I said, "Ma'am, let me ask you something because I'm the lead medic." I said, are you an alcoholic?" She was like, "Nope." I said, "Obviously you don't have cancer because it's not in your paperwork." She said, "No, I don't have cancer." "Do you have an eating disorder?" She was like, "Yes." I said, "Are you bulimic?" She was like, "Yeah." "How did you know?" "The mouth sores, the esophageal varices, because all the purging that she's doing, all that acid in your stomach is going to erode your esophageal lining. The fact that she had this bloody tissue in her hand because she was bleeding from the mouth, the dry heaves, all of these things, it was like bing, 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 bing. Now, again, for me, because I'm thinking outside of the box, I was able to have a whole different interaction with her instead of just giving her some Zofran and stop as an antiemetic and an IV, which I did both of those things. But because I was aware, because I'm a WHY paramedic, it changed the whole interaction. And this is why I want to have these talks like on this podcast, because they have people like yourself on, because I want to raise the awareness for other first responders to say, you know what, you may encounter somebody that it may come out as a GI bleed, but why? Mm-hmm. Why is this person having the dry heaves? Mm-hmm. It's important to know that this person is bulimic. It's important because you're going to treat that person not only as somebody who having a GI problem, but now she's a mental health patient too.
Yes.
She needs more help. She needs more resources than probably what she's getting because it accumulated to her calling 911. Yes. So that's why we're having you on this show.
Yes.
What do you think about those two situations?
I mean, first of all, I commend you. even thinking.
And before you answer that, I'm sorry, I
Oh
left
no,
out
go ahead.
one important component with the second lady that had the dry heaves. The reason that she became bulimic was because she was sexually traumatized too, and she was a very shapely woman,
Mm-hmm.
and so the guy that raped her, basically, he was making comments during the rape about her figure and all this
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah,
afterwards, he said, "I'm going to do everything I can do to not be as attractive to be a victim
yeah,
anymore." She became obese. She didn't like that. So she tried all these weight things and all these diets and all that stuff, and it failed. So she said, "I'm just going to go the bulimic route." And
yeah.
she had a horrible time with that. So that's how that
Mm-hmm.
all ties into what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt,
yeah.
but
No, I was just gonna say, like, you just even off the first call, then being aware and taking the time to then think out of the box that this person may have an eating disorder is it's amazing, because like you had said, there isn't that much training. Even doctors, I have a friend that is a doctor, and she said in medical school, unless you were going to go into psychiatry, in medical school for just the MD, they had one module on eating disorders. And that blew my mind when we have, I mean, we had it's staggering to say that, 30 million people have an eating disorder, or, only 25% of people will get help for an eating disorder. So when she told me she has one module in medical school out of the 4 years, that was like, that made me feel like sick. It's like sad. And so for you to be able to say, I started noticing, I thought about it, I thought out of the box. That's amazing, because not many people do that. And you going in on a different approach to her probably, saved her in so many ways, and also was able to help her get some help, because those bleeds, the mouth sores, the bleeding, that can kill you, as you know.
yeah.
The electrolyte throws off with bulimia, and so it literally can kill you, and you won't even know that it's coming because of the vomiting. And so you seeing that is something that doesn't happen, and it's so unfortunate, because people don't get help.
And that's what it's all about. We, as first responders, especially on the EMS side, we are supposed to be patient advocates. We
Mm-hmm.
are patient advocates. You can't have one without the other. You have to be a patient advocate. And so for me, when I'm having these discussions with other first responders, especially the EMS professionals, I'm like, look, your job, you hate the term ambulance driver. I hate the term ambulance driver. None of my license or certifications that we have say or have the word ambulance on it. You are practicing pre-hospital emergency medicine in austere and other conditions.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a practitioner. Our technical term as paramedics are physician surrogates. We have a lot of autonomy in the field. We have to do assessments. We have to do differential diagnosis. We have to do a lot of things in an emergency setting like that. And we have to be the eye in the hurricane of that patient's emergency. So there's a lot of things that are going on and a lot of moving parts in an emergency call situation. You got to manage all that stuff, and you got to be aware of there might be other factors at play here, not just what you see, that can make a huge difference in how you even treat that person and give them the help and the resources that they need. I want to move on to your breath work.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get a little bit more into that. You say you typically do about 1 to 5 minutes of breath work with the client.
Yeah.
Let's do a 1 minute breath work, Sim, because I've never seen or
Okay.
heard that or whatever.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm your client. I'm having a panic attack or panic attacks, or let's say I'm having one right now.
Mm-hmm. If you're having one right now, I would
I'm
say
having one.
you're having one right now. I would tell you, okay, put yourself where your feet can be on the ground. You're
Okay.
somehow making sure your feet, your back, something is on the ground to ground yourself in to an actual place.
Okay.
Look around. Make sure you can see what something. Pick a picture. Pick something that you can now focus on.
Okay.
And if you feel that you are safe enough to, I want you to close down your eyes. And if you don't
Okay.
feel safe, that's okay. Keep your eyes open, staring at that one object.
Okay. My eyes are closed and I'm focused on the object that I was looking at before I closed my eyes.
Okay, and so now I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And keep doing in through the nose and out through the mouth, knowing that you are safe. You are right here. I am with you. Feeling yourself rooted into the ground. With the mantra, I am safe. Just repeating that in your head, I am safe. You are right here in this moment. You are right here. No one is hurting you. And when you keep inhaling, inhale safety. And when you exhale, let go of anything that is feeling unsafe, anything that is feeling shame, guilt, anything that is causing this anxiety. When you breathe in safety, and exhale all that is not serving you. Let's take a few more deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And when you feel ready, only when you feel ready, opening and looking at the object, the sights around you that you are familiar with, coming back into the room, into this space, into this moment, knowing that you have all that you need One more deep breath through the nose and out through the mouth.
I feel actually better. You know, the anxiety that I was feeling, that kept playing in my mind, is about the stuff that's happening in Texas with this active shooter event.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't know, me being a paramedic and a firefighter, one of the certifications that I have is I'm a Stop the Bleed instructor and trainer. So I travel across the country teaching people how to survive in real time, how to utilize IFACs, which are individual first aid kits. The number one cause of death in a trauma situation is uncontrolled bleeding. And we see that a lot in these situations. And so that's part of what I do outside of the podcast world. And I just thought about how, and you and I talked about this before we did the recording, about how you just were in a bad spot, thinking about the news stories, how I was in a bad spot all last night about this stuff. So this actually helps. Breath work is amazing. I got to do more of this because there was a point I was talking to a therapist. She's a psychologist, and we were talking about doing a conversation this weekend in her room on Clubhouse, and she couldn't even talk. Like, she had been reaching out to me all day, and when that news hit, like, I called her back, and she just couldn't even talk. I was like, I'll just talk to you tomorrow. We're just going to table it for today. So this actually helps because I feel a lot better than I did earlier. So I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. And like that practice can be done, I mean, anywhere, anytime. If you are feeling, it's just important to feel rooted in to the seat, to the ground, feet on the floor, to feel that grounding in your body is so powerful. And then, going from that up here feeling, a lot of us hold our breath. A lot of us are shallow breathers. We don't even realize it. And so doing very intentional in through the nose and all the way breath out, it takes your body, like that nervous system, from here down a little. And just knowing, like, the mantras, any mantra that you feel you need. And it's bringing in the positive or the safety and letting out the things that feel yucky, but feel sad, feel, angry. That when that breath comes out, you are releasing that energy inside of you. And so it does really make a difference, even with just that, And so I'll do that with clients. And that's called integrative. So it's shorter. It's called integrative. Yeah. Yeah.
When you had me do my focus, I looked at your picture that I have here. For those that are not going to be watching this video, a portion of the podcast, I have a couple of pictures up. So I have one, the background that I'm sharing is our logo. And on one side is Erin's website, which is InBodyLoveCoaching.com. And then on the other side of the logo is a picture and it's Erin's profile pic from Clubhouse. And I told her before, I said, whenever I see her Clubhouse pic, I don't care what mood I'm in outside of happy. When I see her pic, it just makes me smile automatically. Like, I could be having a bad day or worse day or whatever. And there are a couple of things that I use as a pick-me-up that are not a drug or alcohol and stuff or whatever, because I don't like drugs and I just drink socially. And so Erin's picture is one of those things, because every time I see it, I just instantly feel happy. Just her expression. So if you are not gonna, so for those that are just listening, I need you guys to go to Erin's Clubhouse profile and look at her Clubhouse profile pic. And I'm telling you, it's just a breath of fresh air, to say the least. So that's what I was using when you said, okay, find something to focus on or whatever. Yeah. And I'm telling you, like, my heart rate went down. I felt a whole different energy flowing through me after we had completed the breath work. And
Yeah.
like I still, it's almost like a tingling all over,
Yeah. And actually,
I still feel it.
the tingling is energy that is trying to be released from your body. And so when I tell clients or people, when they do breath work, any type, if they have the tingling in the feet and the hands, that's normal, but that's just like energy trying to get out. So I say to shake your hands, like if you continue to shake them, that's the energy that's trying to get out of your body, that's trying to be released. There's so many different
It's a
physical things
different way.
that can happen, but you said tingling in your hands. So it's just,
Well, yeah, it's
shaking.
all like all over. Like I feel it in my core. It was like
Oh
kind of getting
yeah,
in
that,
my legs, in my
mhm.
arms and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this
Yeah,
feels
you're
pretty
moving
good.
oxygen. You're moving
Yeah,
the
like yeah.
oxygen. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that more because I've been focusing more on, and pardon me if this is offensive.
Okay.
A lot of people that I've been interviewing are doing alternative therapies. I don't like that term because to me it's like somebody calling me an ambulance driver.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it like you are just as much of a mental health professional as a licensed and degree PhD level person or what have you. Just because you don't have a script pack in front of you and can prescribe somebody some medication does not mean that your service and your work and your expertise is any less valid. And so I hate when people say alternative
Yeah.
therapy. What do you call what you do?
Well, when
How do
I
you feel
say
about that term?
yes, well, I don't, yes, I also feel like when people say, well, it's not, alternative means that it's not in conjunction with. So when I say like I do when I'm breath work, I say it's an added modality and
Yeah.
to what I do. So it's part of everything, but it's in addition to, because I feel like breath work is such an amazing uh, way of being. It's not very well known, but it's known. People hear breath
Yeah.
work and they're like, "What?" But it changes your life, and so I always say it is an addition to my coaching, to what I do. So I can, I do it by itself, or I do it in conjunction with my coaching practice.
You're a trauma coach.
Mm-hmm.
You see clients on a regular basis. What's some of the strangest things that you've been asked to do therapeutic wise for a client?
The strangest. So I don't think anyone has asked me, but what have I done?
Sure.
I think, see, people are so different. And so that's why, like with my clients, it's never a quote, one size fits all approach. So I would never do the same thing with one client that I do with another. I might have a variation of it. I don't think it's, I'd say weird but it's known, but people don't do it, is being outside in nature. So when I have someone who has had trauma, let's say, them being in nature, them being rooted to the ground, to things outside of themselves that are safe, but that are growing, that it's, being in the mountains where I live, it is something that I love to do, and being in this type of serene. I'm looking out my window. I'm like looking out at, because I look out to the mountains. Being in that is very calming. It's very, it's just kind of like breath work. It brings down that nervous system from that fight or flight to the rest and digest. And I never figured out why I hated the wilderness camping. I still don't really like camping, but why I stayed away from the outside, the trees. And for me, I figured it out. I was like, that has to do with my trauma. That has to do with me subconsciously not feeling safe, not feeling I deserved to feel safe. And where there's so much safety in nature, that I finally could relate it back, which is very interesting to me, because you never would think that, right? But I hated nature my whole life. And I was able to trace it back to my trauma. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Right?
Erin, I can talk to you all the time.
Right?
I love having conversations with you. I love sharing rooms with you, especially in Clubhouse. I'm going to have you back on a later show, because I definitely want to talk more about your NLP practice work, especially in relationship to these traumas.
Yes. Yeah, that could be a whole conversation.
Right. That's why I just mentioned it in the beginning. Yeah. I'm going to pick at least one of those things that we can do, which was the breath work, because a lot of people are like, well, it's just breathing. Like, you're a human, you breathe. Just like some breathe. So, but I said, I'm going to have Erin back just to talk about the NLP practice work that she does dealing with these two issues.
Trauma,
offenses, trauma. That's going to be a whole nother episode. We definitely will do that. So that'll be kind of our part 2.
Yeah.
I want you to tell people about, and I did a bunch of shameless plugs for you earlier.
That was like,
I know, I love your CV. I'm like, man, boom, 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 boom. That's cool. So I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with Erin and what you got coming down the pike.
Well, what I got coming down, for me, it's the interviews I've been asked to do, the podcast. I think for me, that's what matters right now. I mean, not right now, but I feel the more I can get the destigmatize mental health, the more I can talk about it, the more I can be real, say, hey, this happened to me, but it is not me. That is what I am about, is my focus. So I really feel that if someone can relate to one thing that I've said, understand that I get it, and I am healed, from 20 years of an eating disorder. So I just want to give people that hope. And that's this whole slogan. Hope is help one person every day. And that is
hope is one person every day.
Hope, help one person every day. So I talk a lot about this. I'm an open book. I talk about the struggles. I talk about the great things. I'm very honest. And so on Instagram, that's where I'm on a lot, to give the reality. I don't sugarcoat it. So, it's the same thing. My name, Erin Reiland, and then the last one's Love. And it's just like Embody Love Coaching. So I'm on Instagram the most. And just, I always say, send me a DM. People sometimes don't feel comfortable commenting on a post. That's okay. Send me a DM. I always want people to know I am not here to just have a client. I don't need that. I don't, I want to help people. But if I can give you resources, if I can, anything that you or someone may want or anything, let me help you, So that's what please reach out. People care. People get it. You're okay. You're safe. So that's all. That's my spiel.
We're going to have all your social media links and contact information in the show notes for the audio and the video portion of this particular podcast, as we always do. And again, if anybody was triggered doing any part of this podcast, that information as far as the resources will be in there. But right now, if you're triggered, call 911 because that's the starting point. And
of course,
we can take
please.
it from there. Please call 911. That's your main starting point, and we can go from there. And again,
you'll be okay.
You'll be okay.
You'll be okay.
July, another 911 number for mental health issues, and that's 988. It's in some locales in the U.S., but nationwide it'll be available in July, on July 16th. Erin, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. I want to thank you for teaching us breath work, for showing us how to do it, what it's about.
Yes.
We're going to definitely have you back sometime later this summer to do our part 2, to talk about NLP practitioning in relationship to traumas, specifically domestic violence and sexually based offenses. My friend, continue to shine bright like the diamond that you are. You see it in your picture here.
I laugh. I'm seeing it.
Much love and blessings to you. Tell those boys to stop acting like butts. School is almost out.
Right.
Stop getting in trouble. Enjoy these next 2.5 weeks because you got the whole summer to do whatever you want to do. Boys, it's just give them a noogie and tell them to go sit down somewhere. I got a bunch of activities that I can come up with that they can do to keep them out of trouble. That's all I'm saying.
Right. 13 going on 30 or 13 going on like 5. There's no in between.
Thank you so much.
Fun times
again.
with boys.
We love you. We definitely want to have you back anytime, and peace and blessings be upon you and your family forevermore.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. Okay.
Awesome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. That was Erin Reiland, a certified eating disorder / anxiety / breathwork / NLP practitioner and trauma coach. I got all her contact information, and I'll provide that in the show notes. We always end every podcast with a missing person case. This case is going to be about a Black man. His name is Marvin Lloyd. He's been missing since November 2nd, 2021. Last seen here in my new hometown, Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but I moved to Charlotte in 2020 after being on the front line as a COVID medic. Again, missing Marvin Lloyd II, missing 11/2/2021. Last seen in Charlotte, North Carolina. Date of birth is March 10th, 1994. He is 5 foot 10 inches. He weighs 170 pounds. The details about Marvin Lloyd II is he has not been heard from since October of 2021. He is a 27-year-old Black male. His case is being handled by the Violent Crimes Division of the CMPD, which is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to provide this flyer and this information in the notes here. This is the flyer from the CMPD about the information that I just read to you about Mr. Lloyd II. Again, Marvin Lloyd II. Incident date is 11/02/21. Case type missing adult. The NCI number is M as in Mary 0064311591. Last seen in Charlotte, North Carolina. Race Black. Gender male. Height 5 foot 10 inches. Weight 170 pounds. Date of birth March 10th, 1994. Eyes brown. Hair bald. He has a thick beard though, and mustache. He wears eyeglasses. The CMPD report number is 2022110-0917-00. The synopsis, which again is what I read, he hasn't been seen since October 2021. Again, he's bald with a full beard and has brown eyes. Mr. Lloyd's family is concerned for his well-being and asks that anyone with any information about his whereabouts call 911 immediately. or call Crime Stoppers at 704-334-1600. 704 is the local area code for Charlotte. The report number for this investigation is 202-111-02-0917-00. Again, any information about Marvin Lloyd II, good, bad, indifferent, ugly, no matter what, call Crime Stoppers at 704-334-1600 or call 911. You can give that report number. I'll have all that information listed in the show notes. I'm LP. I want to thank you for joining us on this episode of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. And as I always tell you, don't live in fear, live in awareness. Keep your head on the swivel. Let's get back to our humanity. Peace and blessings be upon you, your family members forevermore. LP out.